Multiplication requires everyone to have an apprentice. Multiplication requires everyone to have an apprentice. Now, before we launched our very first service when we were church planting, this small little team that we had, it had grown to 5, from 4 to 5 now. All of us went out and started a small group. Well, there was only one problem. There was literally only the 5 of us, okay? We had no people. So there were 5 of us, and so to solve the dilemma, we would all, at least at the beginning, go to everybody else's small group that they were leading, so that if people came, it looked like, oh, there's at least some folks here and somebody's interested in this new church. And imagine this too. What we would do is we would basically do the same lesson, okay? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Like the same icebreaker, and we'd all answer it on Monday. And then we'd answer it again on Tuesday. We'd answer it again on Wednesday. And on Thursday, we're acting like, oh, that's so interesting. It's like we've never heard that before. We're hearing the same thing 5 nights in a row. Okay, as a church planter, you do whatever you have to do to try to get this thing off the ground. But here was the key about those small groups. Okay? The first small groups were multiplying because every one of us asked someone to be an apprentice leader. As we built relationships in the community, we brought someone alongside us and asked them to be an apprentice leader. We had at least one. And now an apprentice leader is someone who agrees to eventually, who comes alongside you, they learn from you, and eventually is released to go ahead and start their own group. And we've done that over and over and over and over again. One of my first small group apprentices was a guy by the name of Jerry. Jerry was not a believer. He had what I call spiritual velocity. He wasn't yet a believer. He hadn't said yes to Jesus, but he was headed in that direction fast. And so I said, okay, that's good enough. Because I think discipleship happens both before you become a Christ follower and afterwards. And so he was my apprentice leader. We spent time together, and it wasn't long before he said yes to Jesus. I got a chance to baptize him, which was awesome. And not long after that, we actually reproduced, multiplied groups. I went and started a new one. He took over the existing group. And we've been doing that over and over again through small groups for years now. And it's at the core of everything we do around multiplication. And I want to make this clear. I cannot overstate the significance of us insisting that every small group begin with a leader and an apprentice leader. That decision was so crucial, so foundational for becoming a multiplying church. And some of the big things I told you that God has done through planting churches and now networks and movements around the world, I'm telling you, it all comes back to this. You have to multiply at every level, even at the smallest level of small group. That was an important choice we made, this multiplying maxim, that multiplication requires everyone to have an apprentice. In fact, I remember another story. Good friend of mine named Troy McMahon. Troy was a guy who showed up at community. And when he walks in the room, he's one of those guys who's just kind of like big personality. And you go, hey, what's going on with that guy? I brought him under my wing, asked him to be my apprentice leader in a small group. Wasn't long before he was ready. He actually took over that group. I started a brand new group. He went on then, after multiplying groups, to be a coach. After he coached leaders, we got ready to go multi-site, and instead of looking at the local seminary, we grabbed Troy and said, hey, you want to be our first campus pastor? And he took that on. He started that site and then started a second site. And then about 5 years later, he came to me and said, hey, I think I want to plant a church. We sent him to Kansas City. About 25 folks went with him. We sent him with some funds to make that happen. He planted that church. 2 years ago, I got invited out to Kansas City for their 10th anniversary of their church plant. And I'll tell you what, I was like a proud dad. They had me speak a little bit, but just going out there, because here's what's happened. We sent them out to plant that church with this multiplying understanding, right? And in those 10 years, they started 3 different networks in the Kansas City area, and they planted over 40 churches. 40 churches. And part of the reason it happened is because we started with him being an apprentice, and he took that out there, and they had the same maxim where everybody has to have an apprentice. It's key, okay? It's key to movement making.